A couple of months ago, I walked into a Midas store, and a Midas store is one of these automotive parts and accessories retailers. And I'm there to look for some HID globe replacements for my car. I wanted to give my car a little bit of a facelift or a fresher look up front, and I wanted to replace the lights, the old halogen lights, with more powerful HID lights. So I walked in and I went up to the sales counter, and there was a sales guy behind the counter. And I asked him if he's got any HIDs in stock that would actually fit the car that I have. And he said, let me go have a look. A couple of seconds later, he comes back from the back room and he's got a box of HID lights for me, which is great. But when I look at the box, it's a brand that I'm not quite familiar with, and I just wanted to make sure it was indeed the right box and it was indeed the right type and all that kind of thing. For example, I needed to make sure that it was what we call an H7 globe, which is the connected type for my car. And I wanted to make sure that it was that true white color. I didn't want one of these funny blue or disco orangey type lighting for my car. I just wanted that nice, sort of modern looking white headlamp color that I was going for. Anyway, while I'm looking at all the information in the back of the box, without prompting, without asking the question, the salesperson says to me, I'll give you 15% discount. Now, I don't want to be rude. I didn't want to insult the sales guy. So I said, okay, fine, I'll take your 15% discount. Thank you very much. And while we're busy concluding this transaction, I asked him the question. I said, is there anything else that I need to buy in order for this system to work? Is everything that I need to fit these globes to my car, is it all in the box? He assures me everything is in the box. Great. I get home, unpack the box, only to find out that I'm missing something. The globe doesn't quite fit or connect to my car's headlamp. But a research turns out I need to get an adapter plate, a little clamp between the light and the globe for this whole thing to work. So I'm a bit annoyed. The whole sales experience was not great. I didn't get what I wanted. I only got half of what I wanted. Regardless of the discount, it just wasn't a great sales experience. But what really got me thinking was the fact that he just came out and offered me this discount, this 15% discount. Hadn't asked for it. Didn't bargain him on the price. I wasn't umming and ahhing. I was simply just standing there reading the box, and he just jumps out and gives me this discount. Also, the HID lights or lamps weren't that expensive. It wasn't like I was buying 10 or 15 or 100 of them. It was a one-off, very inexpensive purchase. Yet he, over the counter, literally, just offered me this 15% discount. Now, here's the thing. This is what we call an exception to the rule, well, the sales exception to the rule. Because one of the many sales rules out there is that you have to maximize profitability. That's the rule. You need to sell for as much as you possibly can. That's a reasonable price tag or the recommended retail price. That's one of the rules of sales. So when a customer would like a discount or would like to pay less, then it must be the exception to the rule. Because if the rule is maximum profitability, then asking for discount is an exception to that particular rule. Part of that is that you need to consider, should you offer or can you offer this particular customer the discount based on the transaction that you're doing. So it's one of those exceptions. It's only there when asked. It's only there if that's where the sales transaction is heading between you and your customer. Yet the salesperson just offered me this 15% discount without any prompt from my side. And it got me thinking about the truth about the exceptions to the rule. And one of the biggest truths about an exception to the rule is that every sales transaction is unique in some way. If you look at all the transactions that you've done over all the years, you'll probably find that no two transactions were absolutely identical, albeit with different customers. Obviously, if it's the same customer, he might have the same type of transaction a few times. But with different customers, there is some uniqueness with every single sales transaction. So, they can't all be the same. Therefore, there will always be exceptions to the sales rule. The exceptions could be things like, oh, that's great, but do you have another color? You need to go and find that. That's an exception to this particular transaction. It might be price. Can you offer me a better price? That's an exception to this transaction. It could be something about, do you have this in a different size? Or whatever the case may be. These are all exceptions to the rule of sales, which is basically, you've got to sell the product for as much profit as you possibly can. Now, what happened in this situation with me and the sales guy at Midas was that the exception became the rule in my case. So, and I don't know this for fact, but what probably happened is that the 4 or 5 or 10 customers prior to me, or 90% or 80% of his customers over the last couple of months have walked in and haggled him for price. You know, they walk in, they look at something, go, well, can you give me a better price? So he's now assumed that all transactions are going to be the same. The exception of, can you give me a better price, has now become the rule. So that's why he offered it to me. My need wasn't price. My need was possibly, this looks pretty good. Are there other options? You know, is there a brighter light? Is there a slightly wider angled lamp, or whatever the case may be? He didn't even bother asking me any of those questions, because I fell into this category where the exceptions became the rule. All my customers want discount, therefore I must offer discount to all my customers. And this simply cannot be true, because there are so many different customers that we deal with. There are so many different buying motives that we deal with. There are so many different needs that customers have, that you cannot apply a one-shoe-fits-all approach where the exception becomes the rule. It just simply can't happen. I remember a while back, I was doing some work with an automotive company, talking to the sales guys about the connected car environment. And I was talking about how it's so cool that you can unlock and lock your car via your cell phone. You can do all this kind of fantastic stuff, and the value add that a connected car has to a customer. And you know, so many of the salespeople said, oh, my customers aren't connected. My customers don't understand technology. Oh, my customers are scared of technology. And oh, my customers don't have a valid email account that we can link to their online, or their, you know, their online car app, or whatever the case may be. And it sort of got me thinking that, you know, you might have had, you know, a couple of customers in a row that didn't, you know, weren't tech savvy, or didn't quite like this, or didn't appreciate this new technology. But that doesn't mean that this applies to every single customer. It simply cannot. The exceptions to sales can never be the norm, can never be the rule. So how do we get around this? Number one is that you need to treat all your transactions that you get into the very first time you meet a customer. You have to treat these initial transactions on a clean slate. Every customer needs to start from the same point. You then move on to do your analyzing questions, or your, you know, to find out a little bit more about your customer and what makes them tick and what their needs are. And then based on those answers, you can then decide which direction to go into. Based on those answers, you can then find which exceptions to the sales rule that you may need to consider, be it a different color, be it a different delivery time, be it a different price, whatever the case may be. But you can't treat all customers with the exception cannot apply to all customers. Just because your last 10 customers ask you for discount does not mean that customer number 11 is going to do the same. Just because the last 5 customers wanted the product in a different color doesn't mean that customer number 6 will want it in a different color. So the exceptions to our sales should never become the rule. As always, put your customers first, and happy selling.